Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first lesson. Actually, it's an introductory part of our first lesson in teaching English in elementary grades through literature. So, we're going to have this study first. I have assigned this to you already, and I hope you are able to read them. Now, let's have this discussion via recorded audio because sometimes if we're going to do it live in our Google Classroom, actually, you've noticed also that we're having difficulties with connection and then with my presentation as well. So this study is taken from the Journal of Language and Linguistic Studies, and it is found in volume 1 number 1, and published in April 2005. The title is Teaching English Through Literature. This was by Morathis Manoglu, if that is read correctly. Now, please allow me to read the abstract to you. This paper aims at emphasizing the use of literature as a popular technique for teaching both basic language skills. So we have the reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And in the 21st century, just to inform you, viewing is also part of the macro skills. So, and language areas which are vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation in our times. Reasons for using literary texts in foreign language classroom and main criteria for selecting suitable literary texts in foreign language classes are stressed so as to make the reader familiar with the underlying reasons and criteria for language teachers using and selecting literary texts. Moreover, literary and the teaching of language skills benefits of different genres of literature. Example, we have poetry, short fiction, drama, and novel. To language teaching and some problems encountered by language teachers within the area of teaching English through literature. We have lack of preparation in the area of literature teaching in TESL, TEFL, or teaching English in second language and teaching English as a foreign language programs, absence of clear-cut objectives defining the role of literature in English as a second language and English as a foreign language teachers not having the background in training in literature, lack of pedagogically designed appropriate materials that can be used by language teachers in a classroom context are taken into account. So that's it. Now let's go to the introduction of this study. So, in recent years, the role of literature as a basic component and source of authentic texts of the language curriculum rather than an ultimate aim of English instruction has been gaining momentum. Okay. So among language educators, there has been a hot debate as to how, when, where, and why literature should be incorporated in ESL EFL curriculum. Vigorous discussion of how literature and ESL EFL instruction can work together and interact for the benefit of students and teachers has led to the flourishment of interesting ideas, learning, and improved instruction for all. Many teachers consider the use of literature in language teaching as an interesting and worthy concern. So, in this paper, why a language teacher should use literary texts in the language classroom, what sort of literature language teachers should use with language learners, literature and the teaching of language skills, and benefits of different genres of literature to language teaching will be taken into account. Thus, the place of literature as a tool rather than an end in teaching English as a second or foreign language will be unearthed. Okay, so it has been actually teachers are having difficulty in teaching literature to students. Another thing, teachers are having difficulty in teaching language to students through literature. So here we're going to find out why is it important to use literature and how to use literature, what are the materials that we need to do in order for us to make use of literature as language resources. Okay. So first, of course, for teachers, we need to understand why do we teach literature, okay, and what to teach. So the use of literature as a technique for teaching both basic language skills, like the macro skills I have stated already, is very popular within the field of foreign language learning and teaching nowadays. So moreover, In translation courses, many language teachers make their students translate literary texts like drama, poetry, and short stories into the mother tongue. I don't know if you have experienced this during your high school days and your elementary days also. This was by Turkish. So, since translation gives students the chance to practice the lexical, syntactic, semantic, pragmatic, and stylistic knowledge they have acquired in other courses, translation both as an application area covering four basic skills and as the fifth skill is emphasized in language teaching. In the following section, why language teachers use literary texts in the foreign language classroom and my criteria for selecting suitable literary texts in foreign language classes are stressed so as to make the reader familiar with the underlying reasons and criteria for language teachers using and selecting literary texts. Now, using literature in language teaching is not there or is not just because the resources are readily available. Okay, so there are underlying reasons as to why we use literature to teach language. So here, in 2.1, reasons for using literary text in foreign language classes. According to Collians later in 1990 to 1993, there are four main reasons which led a language teacher to use literature in the classroom. First, these are authentic material. Next, for cultural enrichment and for language enrichment and personal involvement. So, in addition to these four main reasons universality, non triviality, personal relevance, variety, interest, economy, and suggestive power, and ambiguity are some other factors requiring the use of literature as a powerful resource in the classroom context. So, let's go to the first reason why we are using literary texts in our foreign language classes or a second language. Okay, so here in the Philippines we use English as our second language and not as our foreign language. When I say foreign language, example of that is I have my Chinese students. So for my Chinese students, English is not their second language. Instead, it is their foreign language. When you say foreign language, I think you had this in your GCOM classes before, wherein foreign languages are languages that are not embedded in our curriculum. So if you want to, for Chinese people, English is not embedded in their curriculum, and these are not widely used in their streets or in their country, meaning they have to like pay or enroll themselves in special classes just to study English. Us Filipinos, if we're studying English, it's our second language. And if we study French or if we study Chinese or Japanese or Korean language, then it is our foreign language. We're studying our foreign language. So let's continue. Most works literature is authentic material. Okay, so first, valuable authentic material. First reason, literature is authentic material. Most works of literature are not created for the primary purpose of teaching a language, which is very true. We these literary works are not written for us to understand or to use a correct rule of a subject verb agreement. Okay, so example, what I'm trying to say is that if we want to understand the agreement of your subject and your verb, like the number of your noun, like what verb are you going to use if you have singular or plural noun. Literary works are not written for that purpose. Okay, so many authentic examples of language in real life context, like travel, timetables, tables, city plans, forms, pamphlets, cartoons, advertisements, newspapers, or magazine articles, are included within recently developed course materials. So, thus, in a classroom context, learners are exposed to actual language samples of real life like settings. Literature can act as a beneficial complement to such materials, particularly when the first survival level has been passed. So, in reading literary texts, because students have also to cope with language intended for native speakers, they become familiar with many different linguistic forms, communicative functions, and meanings. Now, again, going back, valuable, authentic material. We use literary texts because literary texts are authentic material. The learners get to experience a real life situations. What are the different languages or the different words, sentences? How does a particular nationality, example, since we are studying American English, how do Americans really use the language? How do they create their sentences? How do they speak? Okay, so we are exposed to different linguistic forms and then to their communicative functions. Filipino English is different from American English, not only the pronunciation, but on sentence level. They form their sentences differently from how we form our sentences. Now, does that mean that there is no standard in the way we use our sentences? That's not, well, there's correctness of a certain sentence is, we cannot really say if there's a standard, but then it has to be grammatically correct. If it's grammatically correct, then some would say that it is a standard. But then we really use language differently. British people use or have their sentences differently also. They communicate differently in some parts or in some situation. Okay, so through literature, we'd be able to have a grasp of how they use it. Okay, that's why sometimes Harry Potter or Peppa, I think it's Peppa Pig, appeals more to kids compared with other cartoons like what's that? Uh, Ipin and Upin. Okay, because Ipin and Upin gets a different audience than the Peppa Pig. And then the students or the kids who are more exposed to Peppa Pig, they have different English compared with those who are exposed to Ipin and Upin and then to Kwentong Pambata. Okay, so that's it. Now these are authentic materials. Okay. Now, cultural enrichment, another reason why we use literature in teaching language. For many language learners, the ideal way to increase their understanding of verbal and nonverbal aspects of communication in the country within which that language is spoken, a visit or an extended stay, is just not probable. So, literary texts are very rich sources for cultural enrichment. Not everyone can, example, not everyone can learn American English or American English through like going there and studying their culture and everything, right? So what we do is we just expose our students to the literature of the Americans, literary works with American authors. Okay, so it's actually very, very effective. So for such learners, literary works such as novels, plays, short stories, and others facilitate understanding how communication takes place in that country. Okay, so although the world of a novel, play, or short story is an imaginary one, it presents a full and colorful setting in which characters from many social regional backgrounds can be described. All right. There. So this actually facilitates understanding, as I've mentioned already, on how they communicate with one another. All right. So example, the word Joe, hi Joe, Joe, hi Joe, or the certain phrases like a long time no see, but now see now. There are certain phrases that are very present in other countries which are seldomly used in our country, and there are phrases or words that are seldomly used in their country, but we use okay oftenly. Now, a reader can discover the way the characters in such literary works see the world outside. So, like their thoughts, feelings, customs, traditions, and possessions. what they buy, what they believe in, what they fear, what they enjoy, how they speak. And actually, this is the reason why we have that colonial mentality, because of what we read, because of the type of literary works that we're exposed to, not just our history, okay, not just our ancestors' experiences, but then it is because of how indulged we are in the cultures of other nations. Example, the Korean culture. We are very aware of their culture because we are so involved in their music and in their drama. Drama is still a form of literature, taken from literature. Okay, so in visual format only. Okay, there. So we also learn how they speak, how they feel, how what is their fears, and then what are the things that they believe in. So this colorful created world can quickly help the foreign learner to feel for the codes and preoccupations that shape a real society through visual literacy of semiotics. Literature is perhaps best regarded as a complement to other materials used to develop the foreign learner's understanding into the country whose language is being learned. Also, literature adds a lot to the cultural grammar of the learners.